Hey guys, welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing. Appreciate you guys swinging by the channel. Guys, today we're going to be talking about the two main ways to catch bass. I want to talk about the approach to them, and that is, should you fish a spot, or should you be a spot fisherman, or should you be a pattern fisherman? And what I mean by that is most tournaments are won on spots. Say, for example, you've got a grass bed that's got a bunch of fish on it, or you got a drop off or a ledge or something that's got a fish on it, or you have this row of boat docks that you have a bunch of fish on it. Most tournaments are won on spots like that. Spots are areas. Now, the other way to fish is off a pattern. Now, a pattern is something that used to be very common, in the past, like 20 or 30 years ago, where, say, for example, if you were catching fish off flat points, and if you went to a point that was flat, you could catch fish off it. If you went to a point that had a little bit more of a slope to it, you couldn't catch any fish on it. So you start looking for all these flat points around the lake that fit that exact description of how you caught a fish on the first flat point. And a lot of times you can develop a pattern with that, because there's a certain amount, or there's a certain population of fish that are using the same structures throughout the lake. So that's the general theory, spot versus pattern. So I want to dig into that in today's video, sort of give you my opinion on that here. Also, guys, real quick, thank you very much out there, guys, for everybody that's taken time to hit that subscribe button here to Advanced Bass Fishing, or join the channel membership, or join our Patreon program. Really appreciate that. And also, guys, thank you very much for everybody that has taken time to use and bookmark that Tackle Warehouse link of mine. I put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of every video. If there's one thing that you would like to do to give back to the channel, if you use and bookmark that link for all your fishing gear needs, channel gets a small percentage of a commission on anything you buy. So it's a good way to help the channel out, and me and my family appreciate that. Okay, guys, one of the things I remember in bass fishing, reading a lot about Roland Martin back in the day, he was a pattern fisherman. In fact, I would say that Roland probably invented the whole concept of pattern fishing. He was very successful at it in the 70s and early 80s, where he would get on some type of very subtle type of a reproducible pattern on a lake, and he'd exploit it and run it all over the lake. Say, for example, if he was fishing the last boat dock in the back of a cove, he'd run the whole lake, and he'd run straight to the back of the cove and fish the last dock in there. Or say, for example, there's 10 bridges on a lake, and he figures out that the third piling from the bank is where the fish were hanging out, so he'd run the third piling from the bank on every bridge. Pattern fishing. And then you have area fishing, where you go up and down the same place that you're catching fish. Say, for example, you got a riprap bank that's 75 yards, and you catch two fish your first pass. You turn around and you catch another fish going back the other direction. You catch another fish, and then you turn back around and catch another fish, and you just go back and forth on the spot, and you stay all day long. That's called spot fishing. Now, in my experience and the tournaments that I have won, every tournament that I have ever won in my life, and most of the tournaments that get won anymore, are won off of spots. Just like that. It could be a lily pad field, it could be a row of docks, it could be, a couple creek channel section intersections, whatever the structure may be. But most tournaments are won by anglers that do not do a lot of running and gunning. They put the trolling motor down, they fish that area back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Simply because a lot of times, once you find a spot that has all the right diversity of cover, there can be a larger population of fish on there. And if you run a pattern, a lot of times you're fishing for individual fish. So let's talk a little bit about the advantages of both. Now, while spots win most tournaments, I can tell you right now that a lot of times that's a low percentage way to fish, because there may be only one really good spot or area on any lake. Now, when I'm talking about a spot, I'm not talking about like one exact spot. A spot, what I mean about that, it could be an area. Like I'm here in Elijah's school right now. It could be something as big as the school parking lot here that has stumps on it, or grass, or lily pads, or whatever. That's a spot or an area. Those are hard to find. They're hard to find, that places like that, the whole big concentrations of fish. But a lot of times it's easy to establish a pattern. Your pattern could be fishing bluff ends, or it could be fishing rock transitions, or it could be fishing riprap points, anything like that. Points are, patterns are generally more consistent day in and day out. But the problems with patterns is a lot of times it's one here and one there, and it's like you may go to one spot that, you know, matches the exact spot that you just came from where you caught fish, and you don't catch a fish, and then you go to the next three and you maybe catch fish on there. The pattern fishing is a lot more inconsistent, and a lot of times you're dealing with just one fish here and there. You're not dealing with larger groups of fish. And also sometimes pattern fishing generally produces a little bit smaller fish. It may produce more fish, but it doesn't produce the size of fish. And spot fishing in general, if you find a spot that has all the right type of cover and the necessary things to hold quality fish, a lot of times there can be a number of big fish in an area. So that's one really good way to fish it. Let me give you guys a perfect example of a spot, you know, spot fishing deal. Down at Grand Lake in Oklahoma, where I used to fish a lot, in this one bay back there, there's in the back of this bay, there's 2 points that are right next to each other that have really nice drop-offs on them. The water goes from like 6 foot down to 12 foot, pretty sharp, and these 2 points are real close to each other. Guys, I can't tell you how many 20-pound bags of fish that I have caught like in June and July on those on those 2 places right there. The fish just load up on them in June and July. Those are spots. Those are spots that the big fish line up on, and you can win tournaments there. But I might run 20 other points in the area within 5 or 6 miles of there and never catch another fish on them. There's just something unique about that particular place that holds the fish. So given that, the point of the video here is you have to fish both of them. If you can find a place that has a concentration of fish on it where you can go back and forth and back and forth, that's the ideal scenario. And most of the time that's harder to fish. Again, consistency comes with pattern fishing. You know, patterns are easily developed on a lot of different lakes. So a lot of it just depends on what you happen to hit on. Sometimes you just won't find the right spot. Finding a spot that is loaded with good fish on it is very rare. It doesn't happen very often, but when you do, you sort of recognize the potential of that. And the more complex the cover is and the more options the fish have in one spot, the better it makes it for that particular area. In other words, if you have a spot that has a combination of some type of cover diversity next to deep water, it's a high percentage area. So that's just the reality fishing. Those are the 2 primary things that you have to really focus on in bass fishing. You have to learn how to do them both. And hope it helps you guys do well, guys, and we'll talk later.